Now from Glasgow is the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer. So a very good morning to you.
Good morning from Glasgow.
Sir Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak is today calling you spineless for chickening out of weekly TV debates. So what's your answer? Are you up for them?
He's sounding increasingly desperate, I have to say. Of course there are going to be TV debates. They're part and parcel of the election cycle now. I obviously want to spend as much of my time talking to voters directly. I could do 100 debates with Rishi Sunak, but I know what he's going to say. He's going to say everything's fine, the cost of living crisis is over, the health service hasn't got any problems. That is all he ever says. Of course there's going to be debates, but he is sounding a bit desperate now.
OK, there are going to be debates. Sky News is planning a leaders' event in our target town of Grimsby. So will you commit to that?
Well, look, I mean, there'll be negotiations as to what exactly we're doing, but of course there are going to be debates, and the more time I can spend talking to your viewers and those listening as well, the better, because I obviously want to get across the very positive offer that we have from Labour,
yes.
That argument that I need to make, will be making, that we need to end the chaos and decline of the last 14 years, turn the page and change and rebuild our country. And the more I can speak directly to voters across the country, here I've got the opportunity in Glasgow today, then the better.
Well, we'll come on to those issues just once we clear up the issue of the debates. Are you saying no to Sky News' debate?
Look, there's negotiations going on, but there will be debates. There's no doubt about that.
And what form will they take?
Well, look,
will you agree to a head-to-head with Rishi Sunak? Look,
forgive me, I'm not dealing with the detail of the debates. My team is dealing with that. What I can tell you is they're going to happen. They're part and parcel of the election cycle. But as I say, I could debate Rishi Sunak 100. We do it every Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions. He says everything is fine, everything's going well, everybody's happy. I'm afraid the problem is that's 100 sort of miles away from where most people are in their everyday lives. And I want to talk to people about their everyday lives.
OK, just a yes or no. Will you agree to a head-to-head debate with Rishi Sunak?
There will be head-to-head debates, of course there will. As I say, I could do that 100 times, but the debate will be exactly the same because he always says the same thing.
OK, let's move on to issues around policy. We've learnt this morning that energy prices are coming down. That's more evidence that the country is getting back to normal under the Tories, isn't it?
Well, I'll be very interested in the reaction of your viewers to this idea that everything's normal, everything's fine, because everywhere I go, so many people tell me the cost of living is still bearing down on them. People on a mortgage, coming off a fixed rate mortgage, know their mortgages are going up by hundreds of pounds. Everybody knows prices are still going up. Energy prices are still, record high almost. I mean, this is £400 more than it was just a few years ago, even with a cap in place. And that's why we need longer-term solutions to this. So on energy, for example, I'm here in Scotland talking about Great British Energy. This is going to be a publicly owned energy enterprise owned by the taxpayer, making money for the taxpayer, but crucially investing in clean British power, which means that energy prices don't come down just for a while, but come down for good. And we have finally security so that Putin can't put his boot on our throats, and we want to get rid of the fluctuation of the last couple of years. That's a much better long-term answer on the issues that people are facing. Of course, I support the cap, but the cap, if you like, is a sticking plaster. It's good for the time being, but you can't just keep having price caps. You need to have a long-term answer, which is how you can get the prices down for good. I want to invest in clean British power, and where that then brings in private investment and there's profit to be made from that investment, I want that to come back to the taxpayer here in this country.
You say that energy bills will come down under GB Energy. When will that happen? Will it happen within months that energy prices will drop under Labour by the end of the Parliament? How soon?
Oh, certainly by the end of the Parliament, and a lot sooner than that, because we can set up Great British Energy pretty quickly. We've done a lot of thinking as to what the entity looks like. We've already, as you would have expected, had discussions with partners that we want to co-invest with. So I think we can get moving on this very, very quickly. But I'll give you a short example of why this matters. In Glasgow, there's an onshore wind farm just up the road. It's quite incredible, with turbines that are, incredible bits of machinery, but none of them were built in the UK. The next generation is offshore wind farms. They're about to be launched. I want us to invest in that so we get the yield. I don't want to, the wind farms that were put up on the hills just a few miles from here were all towed in from other countries. We didn't get the jobs that went with them. I'm determined to turn that around so that where we're investing, we're paying our bills in this country, we're getting the jobs, and we're getting the lower prices that go with it.
You say that you'll decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030. Climate experts say that reaching that target will cost a lot more than you're currently committing to it. So are you prepared to raise taxes to fill that gap?
So what we want is clean power by 2030. And that's one of the 5 big things that I want to achieve in government, because that will bring our prices down. That will give us energy security. It'll also give us very, very many jobs. I do think it can be done by 2030. I accept it's a challenge. All the people I've spoken to about it saying it is a challenge, but it's doable, Keir, but you've got to have an absolute focus on it.
As for the costings, it requires an additional £15.5 billion per year.
Yeah, on the costings, I've gone through each and every costing needed for clean power by 2030, and we are sticking with each of those commitments that we've already made. So that is all in place. Now, I know it is going to be a sleeves rolled up, absolute laser focus, purpose-driven government if we're going to achieve this. But I think we can do it. I'm ambitious for our country. I think we can drive this forward. And the prize is huge to have those lower bills permanently, to generate tens of thousands of jobs, and to have energy security. So when Russia acts in the way that Putin has, it doesn't impact on households in the United Kingdom. That's really important.
Energy is one area that you've backtracked since you became Labour leader, ditching your promise to spend £28 billion a year in green investment. It's not the only one, is it? You've also dropped pledges to abolish university tuition fees, increase income tax for the top 5% of earners, bring into public ownership the utilities. So are people right to worry that any promises you make now will be junked once you're in number 10?
Well, let me take that on head on, and thank you for putting it to me, because if you take, say, tuition fees, I do think the current system is unfair. I think it's unfair on students. I think it's unfair on universities. It needs to change. And I did advocate getting rid of tuition fees. You're absolutely right about that. Now damage has been done to the economy. We've got to make a choice, because we've got waiting lists that are the best part of 8 million. The money is not available to do both 40,000 appointments every week to bring the waiting list down and tuition fees.
Okay.
So I've had to, hear me out, because I do think this is very important. In the end, if you can't do both, you have to make a decision. Are you going to abolish tuition fees, or are you going to bring down the waiting lists? I've taken a political choice. I accept that. People will judge me on that. I accept that. My choice, given the level of waiting lists, is to bring those waiting lists down and put the NHS back on its feet. That means I can't abolish tuition fees.
Okay.
Now, you will say to me, well, that's a U-turn. It's the practical reality of the damage that the Tories have done to the economy. And many people watching this will know that they wanted to do many things, but when they look at the costings, they can't do all of them. They've got to make a choice. What I want to do is be clear about what that choice is, and to say it this side of the election so people can judge me. Is he right to prioritise the NHS over tuition fees? If you agree with him, then that might be a reason to vote for him. If you think no, I think we can leave the NHS on its face, on its knees, but get rid of abolish tuition fees. If you think that's the right choice, well, that's a difference of opinion. I've made my choice in difficult circumstances because they've busted the economy, but it's I don't want to announce this after the election. I want people to be able to judge me. I've prioritised the NHS. That is my political choice, and people viewing this will have to decide whether I've made the right priority there. I think I have.
The Labour Party is comfortably ahead in the polls, but your own personal rating lags behind the party's. Why do you think that is? Do you think it is that people think they don't know what you stand for, that you do backtrack on your promises?
The Labour Party is ahead because we're a changed Labour Party. That is the project that I have led for 4 and a bit years.
What about
since
you
the
personally?
very
Why
first.
are your
But
poll ratings not better?
Just hear me out. We're ahead in the polls because we've changed the Labour Party. That is my project. That's the work I've been doing for the last 4.5 years. And therefore, I'm proud of the fact that we have now a changed Labour Party. That would not have happened without my leadership of the Labour Party, and that's why we're now in a good position to go into the election. I'd also say that we've seen plenty of examples of failed Tory governments, but where the Labour Party has not come into government because it wasn't clear enough about the importance of security, the economy, and our borders. This changed Labour Party is absolutely clear about those things, which is why I think that we're in a good position going forward. Obviously, the polls don't predict the future. We have to earn every vote, to humbly ask for votes. And what I say is, look, I've changed the Labour Party. I'm humbly now asking people to give the Labour Party the opportunity to change the country and put the country back in the service of working people.
You've changed your mind on policies, and we've talked about that a little bit, but you've also changed your mind on people as well. Jeremy Corbyn has just announced that he's going to stand against Labour in his constituency. This was a man that you backed to be the country's leader 5 years ago. Now he's not allowed even in the party. What's your reaction to him standing against Labour?
Well, that's a matter for Jeremy Corbyn. I'm very clear. The first thing I said as Labour leader is that I would tear anti-Semitism out of our party by the roots. That was my first solemn promise, and I've followed through on that. And that is why I took the decision that Jeremy Corbyn would not stand as a Labour candidate at this election. What's happened with Jeremy standing as independent, that's a matter for him. We will have an excellent Labour candidate in Islington North making the same argument as we will across the country, which is it's time to end 14 years of chaos and division. It's time to turn the page and a fresh start and rebuild our country together.
So Jeremy Corbyn, not a Labour candidate. What about Diane Abbott? Will she be a Labour candidate come the general election? Well,
the final decisions on candidates is coming up in a few days' time, I think June the 4th. It may be a little earlier, a little later, I can't quite remember. But within a relatively short period of time, the final list of candidates will be decided, and that'll be a matter for the Labour Party's National Executive Committee.
If she's not a candidate, how comfortable are you that Natalie Elphicke will be a Labour candidate and not Diane Abbott?
Natalie Elphicke won't be a Labour candidate. She's standing down at this election. We have an excellent candidate in Dover. But what I would say, because it's a broader point you put to me, which is important, which is this changed Labour Party is about taking our country forward. And I think many people, whether they voted Labour in the past or not, would say, actually, I do want to take the country forward, my community forward, and my family and myself forward. And Labour Party, this changed Labour Party, is the party that can now rebuild our country. And I think if we get the privilege of coming into government, it will be to serve, and service will be tattooed through everything that we do.
And we've got to let you go, but briefly before we go, tell us why you're there in Glasgow today.
I'm here in Glasgow today to launch the Scottish campaign for this general election, and also to reiterate that Great British Energy, this publicly owned company, will not only be making money for the taxpayer, but based here in Scotland.